Hi, welcome to this lecture. Now, we want to learn how can we modify the legend using a different function, in that case where we take the fill argument and map it to a categorical variable. So let's see what do I mean by that. So I'll clear the console and I'm going to say in this data set, we'll also examine the relationship between the displacement as well as the miles per gallon. So if I run this, now what we want to do, we want to map fill to this categorical variable number of cylinders. And if you run this, you observe we are simply just getting these scatter plots. Okay, now what has just happened in this case is that we have mapped fill to cylinder variable. Now let's say we come in here, we also change the shape. So we should be careful with our parentheses. So we come and say, let's change the shape. So now if we change the shape, what you are realizing now is that we are getting these points plotted or filled by the number of cylinders with different colors. The scale layer function that we're going to use in this case now, because we used fill, then it's manual, okay, because we are modifying the legend. Now what we want to do is we first want to change the name to cylinders. Then after that, we want to change the colors to be our own desired colors. In order to do that, we're going to say values, then we pass in this vector of colors. So we specify red, we specify blue, then we specify green. Okay, and if we run this, you observe now we have changed the name as well as the colors. Okay, what we did, we changed the name by modifying the name argument within this function. Remember, it's scale, then it's the aesthetic. Now, what is our aesthetic? It's fill. Remember, we used fill, so we no longer have color. So we used fill. Then we used values argument to specify our own desired colors in this particular scatter plot. Next, we want to modify the labels. So we come in here and now we say we want to modify the labels. So in order to do that, we come and say labels, and then we pass in a vector to specify 4, then we specify 6, then we specify 8. So we want to change the labels in the legend. So let's run this. So you come in here, same thing as we have seen with color, but now we are using fill. So we have been able to modify these argument labels in order to change the labels in the legend. We can also modify the limits. Okay, now let's say we come in here and we say limits, and then we say we only want the number of cylinders that are at least 6, so it's going to be 6 and 8. So if you run this, and when you come in here, we're also getting this warning. It's because this set of points are no longer inside the legend. So ggplot2 is giving us a warning. However, there's something that I want you to notice, and you should pay attention to it. Remember, we changed the labels, okay? But now we are saying here we only want 6 and 8. Now, look inside this legend, we have 4 and 6. That is because we have labeled this particular legend according to this vector here. So if you come in here look what happens if we remove this labels argument. So if you come in here and then you remove this labels argument, and if you try to run this, now you only have 6 and 8. Okay, but now let's say you also wanted to add your own labels. So if you come in here and you say, now because you want 6 and 8, you will come here and say this is 6 and then this is 8. And if you run this, you notice that you have 6 and 8. Should be careful whenever you're gonna add the limit, you should also pay attention to your labels. Otherwise, your legend might be displaying information that is not true. Remember, we can also use breaks. Okay, so if we come in here and say, in place of limits, we use breaks. And if you run this, you notice nothing changes. That is because in most cases, breaks arguments ensures that the labels in this argument will represent these levels, which is 6 and 8. So as we have specified here, okay, we can also come in here and say maybe we want this to only represent 4 and 8. So if you run this, so we have to change also here to 4. Change our labels to 4 and 8. So that is exactly what has just happened here. We now have represented this scatter plot, and we only have 4 and 8 as the number of cylinders. So you should be careful with your labels, especially if you're going to add the breaks or the limits.